Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always by my guy Rocky Magana. Kramer Sansone in the background helping us keep this thing moving. And to Kramer's dismay, the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely dominant win over the Las Vegas Raiders. They take it down 31-13. Chiefs now claim the lone AFC bye, ensure that Patrick Mahomes' undefeated streak against the AFC West on the road continues, and they do it. And I think, Rocky, the most dominant win that we've seen from them in a while now. Like, there's not a lot to pick apart from this game that isn't a positive for the Chiefs. Like, this is the exact kind of performance that I think we needed to see ahead of the playoffs. Now they get a bye, and that could wind up being huge because Frank Clark left today's game with the groin injury. So you obviously don't want to lose any pass rush depth ahead of the postseason, but you get the bye, you lock up the 1 seed in the AFC, and you do it with an impressive win on the road. Just not much to complain about on my end from today's performance, Rocky.
I tell you what, anytime the score is a palindrome, I'm happy. It's just one of those weird things. It just makes you smile, especially when the Chiefs are on the front end and it starts with a 3. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kramer, but you guys are still looking for a quarterback. It looks like Stidham is not him. It was just a dominant performance by our Kansas City Chiefs from front to back. They even had time to bust out some nursery rhymes and do a little bit of Ring Around the Rosie pre-snap coming out of the huddle. And it was just a fun game to watch as a Chiefs fan, honestly. Like, it's crazy because you knew coming into today's game that the first round bye for the playoffs is on the line. Like, this was something that the Chiefs had a lot to play for today, and it was a weird week leading up to it. And they came out and they didn't just dominate the Raiders from front to back. They gave us a really entertaining game to watch in the process. Like, this was like one of the funnest Chiefs games to watch all season, I think.
So I'm going to be honest with the Arrowhead Pride listeners. If you're watching us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, you can hear it later on the podcast. But it's a division title, another AFC bye, another top seed performance for the Kansas City Chiefs heading into the postseason. And it's a Saturday night, so that means it's time for a beer, Rocky. We got something to celebrate. Got a nice quiet week next week heading into the playoffs. It's a really big deal for the Kansas City Chiefs. And, it doesn't come under the best set of circumstances, but all they can do is play things out, and they play, and it all played to their advantage. They are now the number 1 seed in the AFC. And we know that for a fact moving forward, depending on how these games play out the rest of the weekend. The Kansas City Chiefs will play either the Chargers, Ravens, Jaguars, or Titans in 2 weeks, and they ensure that they are only 1 win away from a 5th straight AFC championship game. Just another incredible regular season from the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes locked up the NFL MVP today. He was kind of running away with it with the Jalen Hurts injury, and really just another incredible regular season that I hope keeps moving forward for several weeks here into February as we head into the playoffs.
Listen, the real season begins today. The regular season was great. It was awesome to get another AFC West title. It's great to get the bye, but the job's not finished yet. And this is where it gets fun. Like, this is where, the rubber meets the road, and everything that matters is all ahead of us at this point. And to that, I also salute you with a little bit of scotch there, my friend Steven Serda. And anybody in Chiefs Kingdom, if you guys enjoy libations at all and can handle those responsibly, I encourage you to raise a glass with us as well.
It's Saturday night. I'm hoping we get a Jaguars win here because I would much rather see Jacksonville in the postseason than Tennessee, just from an entertainment perspective. So hopefully the good times do move forward on Saturday evening, but it's time to celebrate. Like, Chiefs are in the playoffs once again. They're the number 1 seed. They get the bye, and they do it in impressive fashion. We've covered this team all year long, Rocky, and despite the fact that they're 14-3, there's been a lot of hair pulling at times this season, a lot of frustration with this team, and there was a different atmosphere around today's game. Andy Reid was totally in his bag of tricks. Like, we got full-blown playoff Andy, especially in the first half of that football game. And we'll get into the offense here on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I want to remind you guys to use the hashtag AP Rapid Reaction in the comment section. We'll try to get to some of your observations from the game later on in the show. And if you're listening to us on the podcast page, we will have all the post-game press conferences available for you immediately after the show. But we have to start off with the defense. And this has been the biggest question mark for this Chiefs team all season long. A lot of highs and lows for this defense this season, but they've been coming on really strong over the last month. And I was messaging with you guys during the game, like, this is the kind of defensive performance that we needed to see from them ahead of the playoffs, that we needed to feel confident in. Oh, it's not just that they've been playing sub 500 teams over the last month. The defense has been looking stronger, and the Raiders are certainly that, but you just needed the defense to put together a strong enough performance to where you feel confident in them getting stops in the playoffs and getting off the field on third down. And they did that from start to finish today. Like, I was just really, really impressed with this Chiefs defense. They had a dominant first half. I think they wound up sacking Jared Stidham 6 times today. Chris Jones ties his career high with 2.5 sacks on the day. George Karlaftis looked great. Mike Dana looked great. Carlos Dunlap looked great. Frank Clark does leave the game with a groin injury, so that's a bummer for Frank. Hopefully he's fine for the playoffs. Now they get the bye. They get the time to get healthy, get McCole Hardman back on the field, and just really from start to finish, especially coming off of last week where Jared Stidham kind of lit up the San Francisco 49ers, the best defense in the NFL, for them to come out and have this kind of performance. And then when you think back to their previous matchup against the Raiders where Devontae Adams absolutely torched them, this defense played incredible today. And it's the exact kind of performance that I was looking for ahead of the playoffs.
I mean, George Karlaftis, 6 sacks in 7 games. I mean, if you spread that out over the course of an entire season, if he played in the first half of the season like he played in the second half of the season, the guy's an all-pro. I mean, we're talking, he's looking at around 14 sacks, and he's right up there with Chris Jones. And then you got Colin Sanders out there looking like Aaron Donald in the fourth quarter. I mean, I'm going to give Colin Sanders 2 sacks today because if Jared Stidham hadn't intentionally grounded it, he would have gotten another sack there. And then we can't forget Mike Dana. Mike Dana has 2 forced fumbles. I don't even know if that second forced fumble was ruled a sack or if it was past the line of scrimmage, but I mean, I'd give him a sack on that too. I mean, the defensive line was just all over the place. From the jump today, George Karlaftis and Carlos Dunlap were adding pressure on the edges. Carlos Dunlap, I don't think got a sack today, which is a shame because he was in Stidham's face from the very, very beginning. And Stidham had no time back there at all. Stidham had a lot of rushing yards because Stidham was under a lot of pressure, and he was able to his credit, evade the pressure pretty well for the most part in the first half. But I mean, he had no time to throw. And how many of his throws did he get hit as he threw? And they just kind of wafted it in the air, and you were either intercepted or fell harmlessly to the ground.
And I understand the Raiders offensive line certainly isn't the best offensive line in the NFL, but it's the kind of dominant performance that we absolutely needed to see. And we needed to see it from those guys up front, right? Because the secondary has some question marks, like Juan Thornhill, Justin Reed. They both had nice games today. Justin Reed has a sack. He also comes up with a huge third down stop. And then Juan Thornhill has the pick in the first half. Like, you need to see those guys make plays, and it's great to see them make plays, but I still have question marks about the Chiefs secondary and, group of cornerbacks overall. But to see the Chiefs defensive line dominate up front from start to finish like that, it makes you feel confident in them going into the playoffs where the competition level is going to go way up. And it's not just the sacks. It's that you want to see them just be disruptive. You want to see them and do it consistently, because that's something that they've struggled with throughout the season. And, Spags has a lot of times throughout the year had to dial up the blitzes to try to get some pressure. You need those guys up front to continuously win and to do it on a consistent basis. And so to do this right ahead of the postseason is just huge for this defense. And Chris Jones just continues his dominant season. He's an absolute force. Ties his career high in sacks, 15 and a half, to put an exclamation point on the performance. Just a remarkable run by this defense this game, and an incredible way to put an exclamation point on the season that has come with a lot of growing pains with all the young members of that defense. And we're seeing George Karlaftis really come on strong and look like he can be a difference maker for them down the stretch. So credit to Spags. It was a tough week. It was a weird week around the NFL. It was the longest week I feel like I've ever gone through in the NFL, with Bill safety Damar Hamlin, who is tweeting today and posting things and making everybody feel good. And it's such an incredible story across the league. For the Chiefs to stay focused and know that they had to handle business to make sure that they locked up this 1 seed tonight is just huge. And I think it says a lot about where they are mentally right now ahead of the playoffs. And the rest of the AFC should be paying attention to the way the Chiefs just won that football game.
Oh, 100%. And I think that it speaks to the coaching staff and the experience this coaching staff has in the NFL, that in such a weird week with so many emotions surrounding the Damar Hamlin situation, and it being such a long feeling week. Like it seems like Monday night was like a month ago, almost to an extent at this point. And for Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo and Eric Bieniemy, and even, even Dave today, even Uncle Dave Tobe, to get the team refocused on the job at hand and to go out there and execute at the level that they did, it's hats off to them. It was a great coaching performance all the way around. And it's, there's no other way to cut it. I'll tell you this, 14-3 in a rebuilding year is one hell of a rebuild, Steven Serda. We rebuilt the entire secondary. There's all the discussion about the offense, which we'll get to here in a little bit, but to go out and to go through an entire 17 game schedule and come out with 14 wins. 14 wins is something to tip your cap at. Like that is a good season. And I don't care what division you play in the NFL. I don't care how bad the Las Vegas Faders are, or the JV Raiders, however you want to call them. And you know what? The best thing about today, we got the bye in the playoffs. That's great. I love that. We finished strong, all these things. But you know what was even better? We swept the Raiders this year, and we ended on a strong note, and we beat the Raiders. Like, beating the Raiders almost feels as good as a playoff win in my book, Steven. There's nothing better to me than to stomp the Raiders in their Death Star, which is really just Arrowhead West with our flag planted below it.
Okay. You're just pouring salt in the wounds of Kramer.
Yeah.
I feel like this is directly taking shots at our poor guy Kramer right now.
Not taking them at Kramer, taking them at all of Raider Nation and Josh McDaniels himself. You, sir, are a bad coach, and you're an imposter.
Well, I pretty much agree with all of that. But from our guy, Ron Kopp here at Arrowhead Pride, through the first half, the Chiefs had 22 more sacks this season than they had last year. And they even tacked on a couple more in the second half. And, just taking a minute to kind of acknowledge that in this defensive rebuild, it's pretty remarkable what the Chiefs have done this season. And, I remember back to the offseason, Rocky, and all of the red flags that we had about the defensive end position for this team. And how are they going to rush the passer? Frank Clark has to get cut. He's not going to be a Kansas City Chief. And they bring him back, and you're like, what are you doing? What's going on here? And they roll into the season with Mike Dana, who, when healthy, Mike Dana's been a monster for this defensive line. Colin Saunders has really stepped up and had the first real healthy season of his career and looked like he can be a playmaker for them. And, he's in a contract season too. So Colin Saunders is playing his tail off trying to get a new deal because he's probably not going to be a Chief next year. And Carlos Dunlap, just the ball swatting machine that is Carlos Dunlap, and how that's carried over to a player like George Karlaftis. Like that's a skill that this defensive line has put together this season that impacts the game on a weekly basis. And it's something that they're really good at. And Chris Jones just having one of the best seasons of his career. I think it probably is the best season of his career, probably just on a down to down per game basis. Like, a lot of credit to this Kansas City Chiefs defense. That's the exact kind of performance that we wanted to see ahead of the playoffs, but we got to get into the offense now. I knew I wanted to ramble about the defense because that was the biggest takeaway from this game for me, but The offense was good today too, and the offense was fun, Rocky, and they did it with ease. Like when they were on the football field, it seemed like they were moving things with ease. They opened things up with a 66-yard bomb to Justin Watson. It's the Chiefs' longest play from scrimmage all season, which seems absolutely insane. Like it just, you could tell from the very first opening drive of the Kansas City Chiefs that no, we're not going to play around today. We're not going to play down to the competition. We're not going to mess around. We're going to go get this playoff bye so we can get a week off and get healthy before the competition really ramps up. And I think they did it from the opening snap. Andy Reid was absolutely in the playoff play calling bag today. And I thought you saw it from start to finish for the most part.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, I think I said it last week too. I'm going to say it again. All I need each week is one game out of Justin Watson for him to suck me back in. You know, I'm officially back on the Justin Watson train. We got to keep him on our team. He's amazing. I love Justin Watson. But even more so, I think that we first of all, the first thing I think we need to lead off with here for the offense is to acknowledge that Patrick Mahomes just produced more yards in a single season than any other quarterback in the history of the NFL. And I don't care that it's a 17-game schedule now, because guess what? It wasn't always a 16-game schedule. And you know, that's the nature of records, is that as the schedules expand, those records get beat. And guess what? Patrick Mahomes went out there, stuck his claim, and he has the record for the most yards of any quarterback in a season in Kansas City. And that's awesome. Like, our guy is the most prolific quarterback season that there has been yards-wise in the history of the NFL. And this came on a day where he didn't have his best statistical day, but he didn't need to, because the defense was playing so well and he was so efficient. He had 72% completion percentage this game. I mean, it was an amazing game from him. They just didn't need a lot of yards out of him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it didn't necessarily play out offensively the way that I thought. Like, I thought Andy Reid was really going to try to push Patrick Mahomes to get that record, and it didn't really work out that way. But I'm fine with it not working out that way, because it was such a solid offensive showing. And they were doing a lot of things easy, and it didn't seem like anything was difficult today. And there wasn't the miscues that we've seen over the last couple of weeks offensively. And so my faith never wavered in the offense this season. Like, I still think this offense can go toe to toe with any offense in football and put up as many points as anyone in the league. But it was the miscues and the sloppy play. And so we get a game where there's not a ton of that. There's not a lot of things to nitpick about that offensive performance. And that's just what you wanted to see. And, you know, it took until week 18 for them to finally lean into the run game a little bit, especially in the short yardage situations. Like, we saw 3 rushing touchdowns today. Kadarius Toney had a rushing touchdown. Isaiah Pacheco had a rushing touchdown. Ronald Jones was in the mix a little bit more than normal. I have to imagine that's just a week 18 thing. Like, just give Rojo some reps and let him put some plays on tape for when he, you know, hits free agency this offseason, and give some guys some rest. But overall, it was a really impressive offensive showing. And Jerick McKinnon continues the touchdown streak to 6 games. Like, there's just not a lot to nitpick about this game plan offensively. And Travis Kelce had kind of a quiet day, but still had some key catches when they needed him to. And overall, there's a couple of negatives that I could lean into, Rocky, but I'm not going to. We're celebrating. We're in a good mood right now. And I think the biggest thing that I'm going to take away from this game offensively for the Kansas City Chiefs is what Kadarius Toney could be for this offense moving forward into the playoffs and next season. If they can keep him healthy, he just brings a different dimension to the field that you can tell. Like, when Tyreek Hill took that field for the Kansas City Chiefs, you knew more often than not he was different than everybody else on the football field. And Kadarius Toney has a little bit of that. I'm not calling him Tyreek Hill, but when he touches the football, he just flashes things that you're like, they don't have another guy on the offense that can do that. They don't have another guy on the offense that can create where there's nothing, that can slide through tackles, that can juke guys out of their shoes. And he's going to be key for them moving forward down this playoff run. Kadarius Toney is going to play a huge role on this offense moving forward.
I mean, we're just scratching the tip of the surface with Kadarius Toney's ability and possibility within an Andy Reid offense. I don't think that he is he's Tyreek Hill by any means. Like, you know, that's a that's a very big claim. But I think on the broadcast they compared him to Percy Harvin. I think that's more of a fair comparison for him. I think that that this offense, if for one of the very first times the last couple of weeks, like we really haven't seen it full strength for quite a while. But like to your point, what we really needed to see was a clean performance across all three phases of the game, which is what we got today. But just from the offensive perspective, you look at it and yeah, you could nitpick. You could say, okay, well, I wish MVS would high point the ball a little bit better or cut back and go vertical instead of just lazily
that's my biggest
trying to run through it.
But
like you could say that, but you know what? At the same time, why go there? Not today. Not today, Satan. Today, this is a celebratory day, and instead we're going to talk about how Kadarius Toney is one of the greatest weapons the Chiefs have had in a long time. If we get McCole Hardman back, it's just another weapon that's going to even be add another element to this offense that we haven't seen yet, and everybody's going to have fresh legs. Like that's the whole thing. And if all of this is with Travis Kelce kind of going into hibernation the last few weeks a little bit, great. You don't need Kelce right now. You didn't need Kelce to have a big game today to put points on the board. But guess what? He's still going to be there when you need him in the playoffs. Don't think for a second that the fact that they're going through McKinnon and Toney and these guys means that they forgot about Kelce. No, Kelce's still Kelce, and he's still out there. And when it comes crunch time in the playoffs, I guarantee you that Mahomes is going to be looking this direction.
And we saw some interesting formations today from Andy Reid. The ring around the rosy play is the one that obviously stands out the most. Just an incredible play call that succeeded, but gets negated because of a penalty, which is a huge bummer. But it was really cool to see Andy Reid kind of dive into the bag and bust some of that stuff out. And like you were just talking about Travis Kelce ends the season on a 6-game scoreless streak after he was on a run earlier in the season where it seemed like he was going to challenge Rob Gronkowski's tight end touchdown record, and then doesn't find the end zone for 6 consecutive games to end the year. But I have to imagine some of the formation, some of the play calls, some of the designs that we saw today from Andy Reid, we're going to get a lot of that stuff for Travis Kelce come the playoffs that the Chiefs weren't willing to dust off today. Yeah, let's do some of the cute stuff with Kadarius Toney, and we've seen it over the last couple of weeks with Jerick McKinnon, and build that up. So defenses are like, okay, we have to respect those guys more. We have to lean into those guys more. And then Andy Reid's going to bust something out for Travis Kelce in the playoffs, and it's going to wind up being a huge play for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I agree with you. I am not worried about Travis Kelce whatsoever. I just think it kind of had to do with the way the Chiefs started playing things over the last month or so, over the last 4 or 5 games, where they start kind of working into playoff mode and Andy Reid starts changing things up a little bit. But Kelce's going to be a huge part of the offense come the postseason. So I'm not worried about that whatsoever. I think the San Francisco 49ers offensive performance was probably the most impressed I've been with the Chiefs offensively all season. But this one was up there just because I know that there's another gear that they can take it to. There's another notch that they can take it to in the playoffs. And that's why I'm flying high tonight. I'm feeling good about the Kansas City Chiefs as we move to the playoffs.
Oh, 100%. And you know what's going to happen once we get to the playoffs? We'll be playing Jacksonville or somebody, and they're going to be, and Dougie P is going to be gearing up for Jerick McKinnon and Kadarius Toney and all this stuff. And it's just going to be nothing but Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster for the entire game. Like each one of them is going to go for 189 and 2 touchdowns apiece, because this whole time Andy Reid's just had this entire playbook of plays for those guys that he hasn't been touching in recent weeks. Whatever you think that the Chiefs are going to do in the playoffs, Andy Reid is going to bob when you're weaving, and he's going to catch you with a sucker punch. I mean, I'm pretty confident in that. Whatever another team thinks Andy Reid's going to do, he's going to end up doing the exact opposite. Heck, he might run the ball 40 times just to make a point because nobody's expecting it and end up winning the game. I have full faith in Andy Reid to come up with a game plan moving forward. If he has his team playing, because you want to peak at the right time, right? And the Chiefs, I would say right now, this game right here, if you're talking about a team peaking, we've been talking about they've just been trying to get through the regular season. But now all of a sudden, at the right time, they decided, okay, let's turn on the gas and let's peak. It's go time. We've been warming up for the last 5 weeks. and now it's go time. So let's go.
Well, and I think another key here is the offensive line and their play down the stretch this season, where they've shown a lot more consistency recently. And, maybe Trey Smith was really banged up. Joe Tooney's been banged up, and Tooney's probably still banged up, but Trey Smith seems to have finally gotten healthy, and he's looking like the mauler that we know he can be. And as far as the offensive line goes, like, there's still some inconsistency there, but they've been better overall. They've put together stronger performances and they've looked more consistent, which is going to be huge going against some of these pass rushers that you're going to see in the postseason. And, even today, Orlando Brown had a couple of bad moments. Andrew Wiley had a bad moment where Max Crosby just absolutely worked him and sacked Patrick Mahomes. But overall, great offensive performance. I feel really good about them now heading into the playoffs after that game against the Raiders. And Rocky, before we get out of here, before we get to your guys' observations, the special teams gave me nothing to complain about today. That in itself is a huge win. Like, they actually put together a reasonable special teams performance. They didn't turn it over. They didn't miss anything. Harrison Butker did almost miss a PAT. It was really, really close. But it counted. It counted. He got the point. It all worked out today for the Chiefs on special teams. They put it all together. It was a complete performance, and that is all that matters ahead of the playoffs. I don't want to talk about the special teams again. Hopefully that fixed everything. The one performance Dave Toub put together this season where the special teams didn't impact the game in a negative way. Let's cross our fingers and hope and pray that carries over to the postseason.
He said this week that the special teams' best days were ahead of him, and that he feels like they had fixed their problems and there's going to be better moving forward. Well, I tell you what. Guess what? Today, Tommy Townsend, you caught all your snaps and you got the ball down and it went through the uprights. And then when you punted the ball, it went really, really far and then stopped deep on their side of the field. Like, Tommy Townsend had an amazing game as a punter today. Nobody dropped a punt. Nobody dropped a kickoff. Nobody fumbled a kickoff. I mean, this is all sunshine and roses from a special team standpoint. And if the Chiefs can continue to do this moving forward, and just this, they don't have to do anything more than this. Just keep it right here where we're at right now, yes. And we're great. Just don't shoot the offense in the foot. That's all you got to do.
Touchbacks, let it go through the end zone.
Yeah.
Don't put the offense in a bad position, and the Chiefs special teams at least did that today. So nothing to complain about for the first time in a while about the special teams. That just highlights what a great day it was for the Kansas City Chiefs. They take down the Raiders 31-13, clinch up the AFC bye, and now our eyes are going to turn towards the rest of these playoff scenarios so we can see who the Chiefs could potentially match up with in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. It's just a big-time performance by them, and just a really impressive win for them and an exclamation point to wrap up the regular season. I want to remind you guys, if you are listening on the podcast page, remember that we will have all the post-game press conferences for you immediately after the show. But let's wrap things up with some comments from our audience. Which happens first? Mark Davis gets a haircut without a pole involved, or he digs up the turf to remove the Chief flag jinx? Well, I mean, they might have started that. The field looked like garbage, as many people pointed out ahead of the football game. So it feels like maybe they put all their money into the facilities there and not actually taking care of their football field. But I think at this stage in life, Mark Davis is probably taking that haircut to the grave.
Yeah, I'm going to say option C, that the world ends, or, Las Vegas falls into a gigantic sinkhole and disappears off the face of the planet. Because, Mark Davis is never changing that haircut, no matter how much he looks like one of the little rascals until he, at age 68 or whatever he is. And then B, he's not digging up that field because he's still paying Gruden money and he can't afford to. At this point, they couldn't risk Derek Carr getting injured, and so they just gave up on their season. Like, they're not the most cash-rich team. He's not digging up an entire field to get rid of a flag. Like, he's stuck being cursed until the end of time, and I'm great with it. Like this is perfect. It's a perfect scenario.
I would slightly prefer to play Buffalo than Cincinnati, even on a neutral field. The Bengals scare me. They're both really good football teams. We'll never know how that game would have played out on Monday night, but through a drive and a half in that football game, Cincinnati looked like they were firing on all cylinders. Like, Cincinnati is a really good football team who has really peaked at the right time, but they're both extremely talented teams that you're likely going to have to face in the playoffs if you want to get back to another Super Bowl.
Yeah. At some point you got to face your fears. I don't really want to play either one of them either. Like, they scare me. And my biggest fear is that this situation with Damar Hamlin has galvanized Buffalo even further, and that they're going to be playing all out every single snap and just be playing out of their minds football the rest of the way. And if they do, I fully expect them to. They should, after everything that they've been through.
It's worth mentioning that, they lost to the Chiefs in the divisional round last year, but that was obviously one of the greatest playoff games that we've ever seen. But the last time Buffalo has come to Kansas City, Arrowhead has not really affected them all that much. Like, Buffalo is not scared to play in Kansas City. It'll be a neutral field, but they're not scared of the Chiefs. Like, the Buffalo is up to the task of beating the Chiefs, and same with the Bengals. So until the Chiefs win in the playoffs over one of those teams, you have to continue to have a little bit of fear about them because they're really good football teams.
They're both excellent football teams. And so, yeah, hopefully they both slip up.
And I guess the Chiefs have already beaten the Bills in the postseason, but you get what I'm saying there. Mm-hmm. The biggest sigh of relief today to me was the special teams. Yeah, I can't tell you how thrilled I am that they did not have a negative play today. It's been weeks. Rocky, since they've had a positive game where they didn't have one thing go catastrophically wrong on special teams. So that's a huge win. That's going to be the most underrated win coming out of this thing. And Butker was questionable with back spasms and brought Matthew Wright back in. And the fact that there was no negative special teams plays today is going to be the most underrated part of this win. Well, the fact that Butker's fighting through back spasms is one of the big stories too. Good job, Butker, gutting it out and get, because if there was going to be a situation where there's going to be an issue with the Chiefs special teams today, it was on that field goal at the end of the first half, right? Like we saw that, last week, the Chiefs get the ball back deep in the territory. They get themselves in the field goal range, and then Butker misses it. So part of you was holding your breath thinking, oh, here we go again. But he put it through the uprights. And so, you know what? It's all roses, baby. Like, heck yeah. Good job, Harrison. We love you. He tried his hardest on that PAT. That was really, really close. Yeah. So, big win. Kansas City Chiefs clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC. They get the first round bye. Depending on how situations play out the rest of the way tonight, the Jacksonville Jaguars take on the Tennessee Titans for a win and in scenario. And there's a lot of other playoff implications that are going to unfold on Sunday. So by Monday, we should know what the playoff picture is going to look like, and we could have an idea of who the Chiefs could potentially play in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. But again, huge win, dominant win, the exact kind of win that you want to see ahead of the postseason. Chiefs take down the Raiders 31-13, and it's another fun regular season, Rocky. Been another really, really strong regular season, and hopefully we'll have a lot more celebratory shows moving forward in the playoffs.
Heck yeah, baby. 3 more, right? That's what we need. 3 more shows?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. 3 more, hopefully coinciding in a Super Bowl win. We'll see. We'll have everything that you need to know at arrowheadpride.com. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. You can follow Rocky on Twitter at Rocky Magana. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. We'll talk to you guys on Monday with the next edition of the Arrowhead Drive, and we'll have plenty to discuss breaking down the Chiefs playoff scenarios.